All right, I think it's working now. All right. All right. My team is giving me the green signal, so I think I'll start. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Uh, all thanks to the Airtel network for this delay. Um, Moving on, welcome everyone to the second session of Android Study Jams. Like our lead is not here right now, so I'll just give a brief introduction. Chitiz is our GDSC lead for Google's Developer Club, Jane University. On screen are our team members who has been working behind the scenes to make sure that sessions like this work flawlessly. A bit about myself. I'm a facilitator and mobile development head, and I will be walking you through this Android study jams. So if you are new to session 2, uh, you have missed quite a lot. So I recommend that after this session, you go back and watch the session number 1. What are study jams? Study jams are programs that are designed by the Google team themselves for beginners like us to get a hands-on learning for Android app development. All right, thank you, Mangalam. Yeah, it's working finally. To get a hands-on learning experience with Android app development, and it is a 1 month long journey. It began on December 1st, and it's going to end on January 10. So let's have a quick recap on what we went through with our first session. We learned about Android study jams, right? And we learned about Kotlin, the basics of Kotlin, why it was introduced, why we needed Kotlin. We made a simple Hello World program in Kotlin using the Kotlin playground. We learned about variables like immutable and mutable variables. Please keep in mind that immutable variables are those that cannot be changed, and mutable variables are those that whose value can be changed later on. Then next we learned about data types. There are different kinds of data types in Kotlin: integer, string, boolean, char, right? We learned about those. Then conditional statements, if else condition, when conditional statements. We did a little bit demo about that. All right, we are missing this on the slide, but we also learned about the loops. We learned about while loop, for loop, right? Repeat loop, and others. We went through functions. We declared some simple functions. We learned about passing an input as a parameter to the functions and passing input to the function and then returning those back. We learned about class and object. We know that class is a blueprint and objects are the instance of those class. All right, we need a moderator for our live chat. Next, I want to go through the role of a participant, that is you. So by now, you must have already signed up and created your developer profile. You should have made your profile public and shared the learn. Let's talk about integrated development environment. That is your IDE. So Android Studio is one of our IDE, right? So Android Studio is a software which helps you build mobile application. And how it does so is by combining lots of different tools into a single GUI, graphical user interface. So you have your compilers over there, you have your debugger, you have your source code editor, you have your build automation tools, right? It packages all those tools into a single software and helps you create an application. So those are called your IDEs, and Android Studio is one of your IDE. Next is Android Emulator. Stream is working fine. Next is Android emulator, and emulators are software that helps to mimic a real device, right? So for example, an Android emulator mimics your Android phone. It mimics your hardware as well as your software. So these will help you test out your application. And the Android emulator makes your testing so easy. For example, let's say you are adding a feature, right? And those features are not supported, or you want to check whether the new feature are going to be supported for your old Android device. So what you can do is you can create an Android virtual device with a lower spec or with lower operating system, and then you can test out your application and check whether the feature that you implemented is going to work on older devices or not. So for that, let's take a quick demo on setting up the Android emulator. Android Studio. All right, so I hope you guys have already set up your Android Studio. Let me check we're on the right screen. Yep. So this is the screen that is presented to you once you launch your Android Studio. On the left, you're gonna have a list of recent projects. Maybe for you it's empty, don't worry. And on the right, you have some menu options. So to set up a Android emulator, find this configure button. You will find your AVD manager, that is Android Virtual Device Manager. And here you'll find a list of emulators that you have configured. So right now I already have a device that is configured over here, Pixel 3a. If you don't have, you can always find this button, the create virtual device. And over here you have categories, right? You can create a virtual device for your Android TV, phone, Wear OS, tablets, automotive, right? And you can test your application over there as well. For example, if you're writing an application for the watch, for the watches, Android watch, you can test it out using these settings. So since we are doing Android application for mobile, we'll be using Pixel 3a XL should be fine. All right. So selected device, select this, watch out for the screen size, resolution, and click on next. Next, you will be asked to select a system image. So system image is your Android version, the operating system that runs on your mobile, right? So you want to select which operating system you want to try out in your emulator. So I already have downloaded the queue, so I'm going to select this for now. If you haven't, you're going to see you'll be the download button will be present, and you can select any one of those and proceed forward. Next, you will be asked to configure your Android virtual device. It's a very simple step. Put on any AVD name that you like. I'll just leave it as it is, as default. And you can see some of the default settings, right? So I'm going to leave this as it is. And now here you can see a new virtual machine has been added. So to launch the virtual machine, just press on this play button and the Android Virtual Machine Manager will launch your Android emulator. So Android emulator is going to mimic your physical phone by using softwares. Alright, is the video lagging? Yeah, the Airtel network is not working so good in our college right now. Alright, I'll try my best to this in low resolution. So anyways, so this is your emulator. So for now, I'm just going to close the emulator. Next, I'll show you a demo application that is already there to make you familiar with the Android Studio IDE. So whenever you launch a project, the first thing that the Android Studio does is it tries to compile your code, right? It tries to go through your code and check, and then set up the emulator, set up the IDE for you. So right now it's checking all those things. You can see over here in the bottom. If this is the first time you're opening your Android Studio, then it is going to take some time to set up the first project. All right. Oh my God, Airtel, what is going on? All right, all good, stable. Um, all right. So where was I? I was in the layout builder, right? Drag and drop. You can make your UIs. We'll go through this more. So this is your Android Studio in basic, Android Studio editor. Now let's go to the slides, and next up, let's make our own Hello World application, right? So going back, let's try to make our own Hello World application now. All right. To create a new, let me see if I'm in the right screen. I'm in the right screen. To create a new project in Android Studio, first head down to the Create New Project menu option. Then you will be presented with lots of default layouts that Android Studio has already prepared for you. For now, we'll be using an empty activity. Next, you'll be asked to put some data or put some metadatas for your project, such as name. Let's name it Hello World for now. And here you can observe the package name that is being used, com.oskuda.helloworld. So these package names are supposed to be very unique, right? When you publish your application in the Play Store, the Play Store will use your package name to identify your application. So if two application uses the same package name, then there's going to be a conflict. That's why it is advised that you need to make the package name very unique. So you can use some of your website domain, something like that. The save location, this is where your application is going to be saved. Next is a language. Right now you have two options, Kotlin or Java. Obviously, please do select Kotlin because Java defeats the purpose of this whole session. The minimum SDK is the Android version that your app is going to work with. So right now by default it's selected to Android 5.0 Lollipop, and here you can see that by selecting this option I will be targeting around 98.0% of the devices all around the world, right? So if you want to like make an application only for the latest device, for example the Android 11, reconnection successful. It limits all right, anyways, uh, all right, so this is our Hello World program that has been built, right? Let's try it out. Just press this run button and then Android Studio will compile everything and then run this on your emulator. All right, we have an error over here. Android 12 requires an Android exported. Oh, don't worry about this error since my Android version IDE is of old version. I have to add this parameter on our Android manifest. It shouldn't be right. It shouldn't be an issue for you, right? It should run smoothly and let it build. Do we still have a live issue? Live And the bottom part is where it will show you all the build status, right? So here you can see that build has been successful. And if I check my emulator, this is the application that has been built by default. That is your Hello World program, right? So you can check the layout. So congratulations guys on writing your first Hello World application. Now, before jumping in to writing a dice rolling app or anything complex, let's cover some basics. All right, let's cover some basics. It's better I go back to the slides. Let's cover basics of Android. All right, so manifest file is one of the So manifest file is one of the important file in the Android structure. It carries all those metadatas and structural data for your application. So manifest file is one of the first file that is read by an Android device. Uh, Android manifest file has an extension of XML, so it helps you download manifest file. Now going back to our live demo. Alright, Android manifest file. So the Android manifest file resides inside the manifest folder, that is right inside the root folder called app. Here you will find the Android manifest file. Double click it and it will open up in the editor. This is a basic XML syntax. You have a tag called manifest that this file is a manifest. And inside the manifest tag, we have defined a package name. So you can see that this is the same package name that we wrote while creating the project, right? And inside the manifest tag, we have application tag that has other properties defined. For example, the icon, right? It defines an icon for your application. It defines a label, which is your application name. That is for now a hello world. It defines does your application support a right to left, right? True or false. It defines the theme and all. So inside application, we have activity tag, which defines number of screens. So right now we only have one screen, that is the main activity. So which is defined like this: name, exported true or false, right? Intent filters and all. So you don't need to worry about this for now. Uh, we'll go into much deeper about this in the future. All right, where's my slide? Hello world manifest file now. Now the second thing that we need to understand is activity, right? So activity is a single screen has a user interface in it. So whenever you open an app and the first screen that pops up, right, that screen is your activity. Activity holds your user widgets, right? Your text widget or your image view, everything. And activity takes care of placing your UIs, right? It makes sure that if you have set that your image should be on top, right? It is activity's job to make sure that the image is always displayed on the top part of the screen. And activity has its own life cycle, right? It preserves its own state. And that is how we developers can use it to manipulate the state of your screen. So talking about activity lifecycle, on your left, you can see a big chart that roughly goes through the activity lifecycle. On the top, you can see activity starts. So that is when when a new activity is initiated. The first method that is called onCreate, right? So onCreate is a method where you define your layouts, you define your views. So all those initializing code goes inside here. And after onCreate method is called, next we have onStart method, right? And then we have onResume method. And then and then only your activity will be running. That is when the user will see the activity on his screen. Now, the on pause method, right? So what happens is, let's suppose you are using an application, right? You are using an application, and while you're on the screen, you get a call from WhatsApp, right? So what happens is the WhatsApp app is going to override, or it's going to be placed on top of your application. Now, suppose you have written a game application and the user is playing a game, and then there's a WhatsApp call that comes in, right? So what happens? So what happens is the WhatsApp call is going to disrupt your game, right? So for that, we have this on pause method. So this on pause method is called whenever there's a interruption in your activity, right? Whenever if there's a third party interruption on your activity. So on the on pause method, you can have your code something like, okay, since we have some interruption, let's pause the game, right? You can have a code for that on your on pause method. Next, from there, you can go to many ways, right? You can either, like, if you cancel the call, then you'll go back to on resume method, where if you go back, you are going back to the on resume method and your activity is back again. But if you answer the call, then the on pause method is going to go to the on stop method and your screen will be no longer visible. And during, let's suppose you are on your WhatsApp call, and then you want to open up your camera and you want to start a video call. So starting a video call takes up a huge amount of resources, right? It's a very resource hungry method or process. So what happens is, in order to provide that resource, your Android is going to clear out any other background processes to make sure those resources are supplied to your WhatsApp video call. So if your app is in the background, that is on stop state, then if your application needs memory, the process of your application will be automatically deleted or destroyed, right? And then it will go back to the starting over here. From on stop, if other application need memory, the process is going to be killed, and then it's going to have to start from zero again from on create method. But if your activity is not deleted by your Android OS, then the on restart method will be called when the user gets back to your application, and then on start, and then on resume, and you're back where you left. So after on stop method, if the user decides to go back, right, go back to the or exit out of your application, then the on destroy method is called and your activity is shut down. So after your activity is shut down, the process of the life cycle has to start from the top again, which is activity starts. So let's do a demo for this. All right. We'll just print out and we'll check the changes in the application, changes in the life cycle. So let's go to our main activity. Inside here, on create, I'm going to add a statement called println on create called, right? So we will know when on create has been called. Next, let's override something like on start. We'll print line on start called, right? And then we have on resume. We'll go print line on resume called. Next, what do we have? On start, on resume, on create, on pause, print line on pause called. And what do we have next? On stop, print line on stop called, and on pause, on resume. 1 2 3 4 5. We are missing out on more. On destroy. On destroy called. All right, so let me build this thing again, and then we will check our printed values to keep track of our. Okay, let me do one thing. Where is our i/system object locket? I'm going to filter out our locket. Switch this thing off. Make sure you have done this. And then let's start our app again. Yeah, you can see whenever our app is started and the activity is loaded, these are the methods that have been called. So on create method gets called first. That is where we set up our content view. We are setting up our layout, right? And next method that's been called is on start, and then on resume, and that is when your activity is displayed. So for example, if I rotate my phone, oh no, I have to switch on auto rotation over here. So if I rotate my phone, you can see there are other methods that have been called, right? So after on resume, there's going to be a pause since rotating or changing the orientation is an interruption. On stop is called, on destroy is called. So the activity gets destroyed, is again created back, right? So that is what happens when you change the orientation and the activity life cycle gets updated. And suppose if you go back, you exit out of the application, you on pause is called, on stop, and then the activity gets destroyed. So that is how your activity lifecycle is handled. All right, so next is layout. So layouts are very important because this is where your user interface is built, right? And to build a layout, we use different, Android provides us different kinds of layouts. We have constraint layout, relative layout, linear layout, coordinated layout, and web layout and all. But we will mainly focus on constraint layout. Next, we need to build layouts, we need to understand what are view and view groups, right? So view, similar to atoms, that is a building block of matter. View is a building block of UI. So view is a unit of UI, right? So many views, when you put them together, creates a UI. So views can be like your image view, a view that is responsible for displaying a button view, which is responsible for displaying a button, a text view that is responsible for displaying a piece of text on your UI. So those are unit of your UI views. Now, view groups is a container which is invisible that collects all your views and place it together, right? Such as constraint layout and linear layout. So usually layouts are considered as your view group. So in this diagram, you can even see it more properly. The green part, that is your layout, which is invisible and covers, right? It's a container, big container, and inside which there are many numbers of views, right? So on the left, on that mobile thing, you can see that we have used linear layout with a text view, right? We can roughly make an assumption over there. And on the right, we have been using an image view over there on the bottom. And there's a button on the top within a layout, right? So that layout could be linear layout, constraint layout, or relative layout, anything. So what are constraint layout and why we'll be using that in our next step, right? So constraint layout are very advanced layout. So these were developed uh, to minimize all those disadvantages of those previous layouts. So it's an improved version of layouts. So constraint layout uses anchors, right? So what are anchors? So anchors is a point from which you can determine one view's position. So you can have alignment rules implemented on that anchor to make sure that the view is placed on that screen, right? And constraint layout was designed because linear layouts, relative layouts had a lot of issues. we had to nest the linear layout, right? So one linear layout inside another linear layout. So all those layouts were being nested, and while rendering the screen, it was a very heavy computation for our Android device. So rendering the screens would be very slow when using linear layouts that are nested. So that is one of the reason why constraint layout was introduced and why we are going to be using that. And the third point is this time के गर्न सकिन्छ यसको लागि. Alright guys, bear with me and my internet. Alright, so this is the design view of your XML. We have three different types of views. One is the code view, where you get to see the actual XML code. And on the design view, you see a GUI graphical representation of that code, right? So it's a very helpful tool and helps you build applications very fast. On the left here, you have palettes, which contains all those common widgets, all those views, right? All those views and view groups that you can use to design your UI. Text, you have different number of types of text widgets that you can use. Buttons, right? You have radio button, check buttons, widgets, layouts. You can use layout, and all of those are available on the palette. And here, this is your, so this is a tree representation of your UI. So layout, and inside the view group, we have one text view, which is showing us hello world. And on the right are attributes, so it shows you the properties of the views, right? And the anchors and the constraint layout, right? So anchors are these points over here. You can see, right, the crooked curly kind of a thing line. So these are your constraint. So what happens when I delete one of the constraint, right? If I delete this, you can see the view is moving, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so a view typically has 4 anchor points, and you can use those anchor points to make to determine the position of this view. So for example, if I anchor this top part of this view to the top part of our view group, it's going to go and stick over there. And for the bottom, if I anchor it to the bottom part of the UI, it's gonna get equalized and be horizontally centered. Similarly, left anchor, right anchor, and we are back where we started. So this is how we can use our constraint layout to make to position our views, right? Are done, constraint layouts are done now. Now that you have basic knowledge about building a hello world and using constraint views, what are activity lifecycle, what are manifest file, so let's move on to build a simple dice rolling application, right? It will be a very simple dice rolling application where when you press a button, the dice is gonna roll with a random number, and then it's gonna show you what number it rolled out. So to proceed forward, we're gonna break down the task, right? So first what we are gonna do is we're gonna head out to our Kotlin playground and then make the logic implementation, right? We're gonna write out a logic for our dice, and then next we're gonna make our UI, right? We're gonna place our image, we're gonna place the button, and then we're gonna work with the image view. That is, whenever you press the roll button, the image view should update. So our first task over here would be to implement the logic for the dice. And going back to the Kotlin playground, let's create a class by using a keyword class, and we'll call this class dice, right? Because it's going to represent a dice. And our dice is going to have a property called, let's say, number of sides, right? So we're going to say sides, and number of sides are going to be integer, right? So this is going to be our dice, which has number of sides and it's called integer. Now, let's implement the functionality of the dice. The functionality of the dice is to be rolled and then give an output, right? Give an output of what number it has rolled, and that number is random. So what we are going to do is we're going to create a function inside our class dice, and we're going to call it roll the dice, right? And then we're going to do like something, and then we're going to generate a random number, and then we're going to print it out. So to generate a random number in Kotlin, it is very easy. We'll be using a data type called int range, right? So int range is a data type that lots of internet issue today. All right, anyways, so we have a function called roll dice as a variable called range that is going to hold 1 to 6, a range of values, and then a random number variable is going to hold a random value that is generated from that variable called range. So it's going to be from 1 to 6. And then we are just printing out the random number. Now let's make an object from that class dice. We'll call this my dice and then call the class and pass in the number of sides. So for now we can pass anything. Let's just say 6, but we are not using that sides yet. And after making that object, let's call the method roll dice. Let's hit the play button. Oh my god, the internet. Yep. So so you get 2 printed out, right? If I run it again, we should get a different number. 4. Run it again. 4. So the number, so you get it, right? We are printing out a random number. And getting a random number is the functionality of a dice. So that is what we have implemented here. Now let's improve this a little bit. I have a variable size. So this 6 is stored on the variable called size. And let's go and make this sides 1 to number of sides. So even if we have 6, if I pass here 12, the number of sides is going to be 12 and our range is going to be from 1 to 12. So when we generate a random number, the number is going to be between 1 and 12. So let's test this thing out. Yep, 12 is being printed one more time and 7 is printed, right? So we have improved our logic a little bit. So let's keep this 6 for now, and we can improve much more on this logic itself. So right now what we are doing is we are simply printing out the random value, right? So what I want is to return that number, not print it over here inside the function of a inside the method of a class. I want to return that to the main function and then print it out over there. So what I want to do over here is the function roll dice is going to uh, return a variable of type int, right? So you can have something like string as well if you are returning any string, but since we'll be returning numbers, I'm going to write int over here. And instead of printing out the random number, I'm going to return the random number. Print it out. Sorry, we return this random number, so I should have a variable over here, random number, my dose runners, and then I can print my random number over here. So we do this. Yeah, now it's printing out 5, right? So our logic for the dice app is done. So now we can move on to designing our application, right? So let's cross this for now. So let's open our Android Studio, close this project, and let's create a new project, empty activity. We're gonna name this dice roller. Package name, save location is all default. Just press finish and wait for Android Studio to load, set up your project for you. All right, I think it's done. So the first thing that we're going to work on is the layout file, right? We're going to make sure that our layout is ready. Show system UI done. All right. So as per the design over here, we want to have a dice and a button, right? So this is a view, text view. So I'm going to delete this for now, and I'm going to add a button. So it's a simple click and drop from here. Just click and drag, and then you'll have a button over here. And next, we want an image view, right, to display the dice image. So right now I'm going to select this default avatar profile. All right. So now you can see over here a red warning, right? If you hover over here, you can see that it means that okay, it's showing an error message that it's saying we are missing constraints. So like we discussed before, constraint layouts needs to be constrained to its parent to define its position, right? So let's do that. Let's put this right so it's centered on the top and on the bottom, so it is centered. And for the button, I'm going to constrain this button to the bottom of this image view, and to the left and to the right, and the warnings are gone. So here you can see that these two views are sticking together, right? So let's have some space in between them. Select this button, go to the layout attribute, and inside here you can set up any margin. So for me, let's put it 16 for now. So 16 dp margin is set up. You can see the space has increased between them. Image view and button. All right, so our UI is ready. Now what we need to do is we need to download the dice file, right? So the link for the dice image will be posted on your live chat. You can all right, yeah. So my friend will post the resource URL from where you can download the dice images. And once you have downloaded it, please extract, and this will be the folder for you. Inside the dice image, you can find 6 dice PNGs with 1, 2, 3, right, showing random numbers. And once you have done that, go back to your Android Studio and then find this resource manager tab on the left, right, and then go on this plus button and import drawables. Now you need to find the file that you just downloaded. For me, it's inside the desktop, dice images, right? So these are the files that I want to import. Click OK. And here you will see those 6 resource files. Click on next, import, and now you have access to those files inside your project. Let's close this for now. Now click on this image and let's change this. On the attribute pane, you can see the source compact, right? So this is the reference from where your application is taking that image. So click on this icon, and you will be presented with a pick a resource window. From here, by default, let's just pick up dice 1. And when you do that, you can see, right, the image just went on full. It covered your whole screen. So to now we need to make sure that our image is of a fixed size. So to do that, go to the attribute section. Here you have layout width and layout height, right? So let's set the width to around 300 and 300 dp, and your height to around 200 dp. All right, so now you can see that image has been resized and it looks perfect for now. The button is there and this is there. Done. Now let's change the text of this button, right? We want to show it that role. We want to change the text of this button. On the attributes, you have text property. Here we can just add this to change this to role, and then you can see it gets updated instantly. This is done, this is done, image view is done. It's compact. All right. Now, let's go back to our main activity file. This is where we will write our code to connect our layout and then our logic. So on the onCreate method, so we have learned that onCreate method is the first method that gets called when our activity is launched. On our onCreate method, first let's get a reference to that image, right? So we're gonna have a var image of dice. Let's say dice image of type image view, and we're gonna refer that using by ID r dot. So a little bit about this find view by ID method. So what does this find view by ID method does is it takes in an ID of a view and then it goes back to this activity main file, the code, and then it searches for this ID, right? So basically that method is searching for these IDs. So since we want to search for the image view, we will be using the ID image view. So inside here r.id.image view. Alright, anyways, we're back. Thank you, Atel, for the best service in town. So let's set up a listener for our roll dice. So whenever we press on that button, it's going to listen for any clicks. And if there is a click, it's going to execute the lines of code that are in between these curly braces. So what do you want to do when you click on the roll button, right? We want to generate a random number, right? So we already have a code. We can go back to our Kotlin playground and then just copy this. Let's go here, down, below. Let's have a new class, variable size. We have to call it private for now. Forget about this. Roll dice, integer, range. I'm going to modify this code a little bit and make it more efficient. I'm going to return 1, 2 sites dot random. Right, so we won't be requiring these lines of code. So basically this does the same thing. So instead of having variables to store each data, I'm just using anonymous objects, right? 1 to the sides. So if your sides is 6, it's going to be 1 to 6, numbers in between 1 to 6, and then it's going to generate a random number from that range and it's going to return. So whenever you press on roll the button, what we want to do is we want to make an object of this dice. So let's call this my dice is dice with number of sides 6, and we want a variable called rolled number, and then we'll save this my dice dot roll dice, and then we're gonna roll our dice, and then whatever the number that is being returned by this method is going to be. Alright, we are connected back. Alright, so where was I? Yeah. The R stands for resources. So resources are everything that are inside this file over here. So what we are doing is r.id, sorry, oops. So r.id is going to refer all those IDs of the views, right? And r.drawable is going to refer this folder here, which contains our image files. So we can go r.drawable.dice1. Dice1 is this image over here. So if you click on this, you can check that this is the one dice that shows number 1, right? And what if the number is 2? We're gonna go dice image dot set image resource r dot drawable dot dice with number 2. If your roll number is 3, we have to set image resource r dot drawable dot dice number 3. and we have to basically repeat this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, change this to 4, change this to 4, change this to 5, change this to 5, and if your roll number is 6, we want the 6th image of the dice. So this is basically the logic that I think, what do we have here? Bar, that's not an error. So what happens is we have a reference to our views, right? We are referencing our views that are on our layout over here. We have reference to the dice image. We have reference to the roll button. And we are setting up a list on our roll button. So our roll button, which is this button, is going to listen for any click events. So when you click on whenever you click on that button, these codes, these line of codes in between these curly braces are going to be run. So whenever you click on the button, we